Okay, today we're looking at measures of spread. Another way of analysing data is to consider how spread out it is. In Year 11 we learned about three measures of spread. The range, which is the difference between the highest and the lowest score. A better way of looking at it is the interquartile range, which is the difference between the upper quartile, called Q3, and the lower quartile, Q1. The standard deviation is another thing we looked at, which describes how far each data score is spread away from the mean. And we looked at a way of doing that on our calculator. So basically, the more spread out the data, the bigger the range, the bigger the interquartile range, and the bigger the standard deviation. For example, a parent group is concerned about the amount of alcohol and smoking shown in films. The parents watched 20 current movies and recorded the number of minutes they saw alcohol and smoking in the film. They presented the data in separate box plots. Which measure of central tendency is shown on a box plot? Well, the measure of central tendency means we're looking at the middle. And the middle is the only one that we can see from a box and whisker plot is the median. I'm going to write it up the top, which is also that bar inside the blue box. Calculate the range of times for alcohol and smoking in the films. So let's start with alcohol. Alcohol is, if we have a look at the graph here, we've got a 21 up here, and we've got 0 down the bottom. So to do that, we're going to go 21, take away 0, so that's the ends of the whiskers, which is 21. Oh, that was for smoking. Now let's look at alcohol, which is the top one. The end of the whisker goes to 15 and the other end goes to 0. So the range of that one is 15. Calculate the interquartile ranges for alcohol and smoking. So again, let's start with smoking. And this time we're looking at the length of the box. So it starts from 17 and it finishes at 3. So our interquartile range is 14 for smoking. Go to the top one, alcohol. The box starts at 12 and ends at 5. So that would be a difference of 7 for the alcohol. Calculate which graph has the greatest standard deviation. Now we can't actually read standard deviation from these graphs, but we can see from the graphs that the smoking one has a much longer line. The whole graph is longer, which means it has a wider range, and it also has a longer box, which means it has a larger interquartile range as well. So that means that smoking would also have a larger standard deviation because it's just another measure of spread. You might want to stop the video at this point if you need to copy it down. Let's look at another example. This one is a dot plot showing the number of goals scored by a soccer team per match over 11 matches. What is the range of goals scored per match? Okay, so each dot we need to know represents a goal. a game rather. So that means in 5 different games they only scored 1 goal. In 2 games they scored 2 goals. In another game they scored 3 goals, and so on. What is the range of goals? So no one scored no goals because there's no dots above that. So if we look at the highest number of goals, that would be 5. And the lowest is going to be 1. So that gives us 4. That one. Calculate the interquartile range. Now to do this, we need to rewrite the goals and we need to find the quarters. So let's rewrite them out. We've got 1 goal. I'm just going to write it up the top here. Another one, another one. So we've got 5 of those. We've got a 2, a 2, a 3, 2 4s, and a 5. Oh, I'm going to squash it in on the end there. Now remember how you cut them into quarters? You first divide them in half. I'm going to cross them off as we go. It's a little messy. In pairs until I get the center 1 or 2. Okay, there's 1 left in the center, so that is quartile 2. And now I want to do the same thing on the left, covering up that 2 and finding the center of that set. You'll find that that one is the middle one, which would be quartile 1. And the same thing on the right is going to give us 4, would be quartile 3. And you should be able to see that there are 2 scores in between each of those quartile markers. So let's go back to calculate the interquartile range, IQR for short. Interquartile range gives us quartile 3, which is 4. Take away quartile 1, which is 1. That gives us an interquartile range of 3. And now we're up to part C. Calculate the standard deviation correct to 1 decimal place. This is where you need to follow the directions that are in your textbook on page 406, and you need to enter those numbers into the calculator one by one, pressing equals after each one. And if you follow the directions there, it'll say go press mode stat 1 VAR. Then you press shift 1, which is edit, and then you go delete. And what that does is zero out any scores that may be still stored in there. Then you press shift 1, which is to get the table up. And then you're ready to start entering the numbers one by one. So you press 1 equals, 1 equals, and so on until you put all the scores in. When you get to the end, you can press AC, and then you can press shift 1 variable, and then you should see on the screen a symbol that looks like this. And that is the symbol for population standard deviation. And if you press equals after that, you should get the answer to that. Okay. Have a go at now doing the questions in the textbook, which I'll put on Compass.